Ethics and Worldview, Instructional Design Ethics from a Biblical Perspective. Ethical Design. Considerations and guidelines that maintain ethical and moral practices when designing instruction. Ethical design considers how learners will be impacted from participating in the design. As Christians, we should be taking ethical considerations seriously as our actions have direct impact on our learners. We have a responsibility to protect the security and well-being of others. We need to maintain honesty, transparency, and integrity in our work. 3 categories that fall under ethical considerations have common violations that directly impact learners. 3 of these categories fall under privacy, inclusivity, and honesty. When it comes to privacy, not being mindful of how technology collects information of the learners presents security risks. Inclusivity. Technology may place limits on how learners access content and may exclude people. Honesty. Failing to cite information or to ask permission to use content may lead to violating copyright laws. As Christians and instructional designers, it's important to pay attention to the risks of these violations and to take up precautions to avoid these things from happening. Protecting the privacy and security of learners. 1. Learners are entrusting their personal data when they participate in online learning platforms. It is best practice to acquire informed consent when collecting any data or personal information from learners. 2. Do not collect data unless it is absolutely necessary. It's often good practice to ask yourself, do you really need to collect these people's emails? Do we need to be collecting their information for this? Is this going to impact our ability to do the instruction or to do research? Review the app features and be sure that the tech is not prompting learners to enter personal information that is not relevant. Be mindful that all data is stored. So when you store data, anyone can access that data. So it's important that certain precautions and security is in place. Be mindful of recording learners who may not want to be recorded. That's also informed consent. So permission to record should always be granted before recording online class sessions or posting student-created content that has any personal information included. Biblical perspective. The Bible teaches that we are to protect and care for people's needs. As educational designers, we know that there are threats that come with technology use, and it is our responsibility to provide protection against security threats. Isaiah 25:4 teaches about providing protections against threats. You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in their distress, a shelter from the storm and a shade from the heat. For the breath of the ruthless is like a storm driving against a wall. Similar to providing shade, shelter, and refuge, as instructional designers, we can take precautions in our work that limit threats to learners' personal information and privacy. Their information and right to privacy should be treated with respect and deep responsibility. Providing equal access to all learners. 1. Provide many ways to access content. Follow UDL framework representation element. When we represent all the different ways that learners learn, people have more access to the content. Provide options and learner choice in content delivery and expression of understanding. Represent all learners in content that is provided. Reviewing content and stereotypes and biases remove barriers from content that would misrepresent or exclude learners. Know your learners and provide accommodations and modification for what they need. It's often good practice to differentiate instruction and include added supports for students who have individual needs. That way, all people get access to the instruction and there is nobody excluded. Biblical perspective. We are to respect and include all people by not showing favoritism. When we fail to provide opportunities for all students and access and participate in their learning experience, we are favoriting one type of learner and excluding the other. James teaches that by showing favoritism, we are automatically discriminating against others. Discrimination based on learner types and learner needs is an ethical violation that has the greatest opposition against Christ's calling to demonstrate servants' love toward others. We are also called to lift others up in the body of Christ. By definition, equity is lifting others up to be able to access and participate in a learning experience that has once not accessible to them. Awareness of copyright laws and honesty in design. Number 1. Become familiar with local copyright laws that would impact you and your design, and review your design to be sure that it meets standards. 2. Review all content and include sources and photos with caution. Some ways you can go about taking caution in what content you provide on your design is always checking for fair use images and resources and educate yourself on how to include the citation for that source. To avoid infringing on copyright laws altogether, you may want to create your own content or to find a subscription service that grants subscribers permission to use their content in your work. It's always best to take caution and to seek out information on what you can and can't use in your design. Biblical perspective. As believers and instructional designers, we are called to live in integrity and honesty in all that we do. Proverbs says that whoever walks in integrity walks securely. We represent Christ well, and we can live honestly and not misrepresent Christ, who is by living an honest life. Christ teaches that we should seek out goodness and refrain from doing evil. We should go out of our way to check and review our work, to confirm that it holds to a certain standard of honesty and respect for other people's work. Steps of following copyright laws often requires us to seek out information and permission. Thanks. And here are my references.